Imagine waking up one morning unencumbered by the noise of the world, unfazed by challenges, undistracted by the chaos around you. You wake up with a clear purpose, a steady mind, and a spirit that is unshakable in the face of adversity. This may sound like something extraordinary, beyond the realm of human possibility, but it was the daily life of one of the most powerful people in history, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. What he left behind were not abstract notes or far-fetched theories, but a treasure trove of practical wisdom, vital advice on how to cultivate self-discipline in the midst of a turbulent life. Today, we're going to dig into the core spirit of Stoicism, not as an ancient philosophy to be admired, but as a practical toolkit that will help you transform anxiety into calm, emotional turmoil into inner strength, and life's unpredictability into a foundation for personal power. In a world of instant temptation and endless distraction, Stoic philosophy reminds us to return to four core pillars: wisdom, courage, integrity, moderation. It teaches you not just how to endure life, but how to conquer it, with equanimity, reason, and unwavering will. If you are ready to take a hard look at yourself, to sharpen your spirit like a blacksmith forging steel, come with me as I walk you through Marcus Aurelius's 10 unbreakable principles. These principles not only have the power to change the way you live, but can also transform you into the most resilient leader in your life. 1. Rely on yourself. The power lies within you. One of the most powerful messages throughout Marcus Aurelius's writings is the reminder to rely on yourself. In Stoic philosophy, this is not a call to live in isolation or to refuse help from others. It is a statement about personal responsibility, about how you are the only one who can decide how to react, how to grow, and ultimately, how to live your life. When faced with a challenge, Aurelius wrote, "Don't look outside yourself for salvation, look within. That's where your true power lies." This sentiment reflects the core of self-discipline, understanding that control comes not from changing the world, but from changing yourself. In the modern world, where opinions, advice, and judgments are readily available from social media, from loved ones, from strangers, maintaining our inner voice is more challenging than ever. But it is in this context that Stoicism calls us to filter out the noise and return to our inner reason, the one that is unaffected by public opinion or fleeting emotions. Relying on yourself means building confidence in your abilities, not through arrogance, but through a deep understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, and core values. It is a form of true freedom when you don't need others to give you permission to be yourself. So how do you practice this? Marcus isn't talking about big moves. He's teaching us to start with small commitments, keeping our word to ourselves, setting realistic goals, and sticking to them without depending on others. When you act without supervision, when you can judge right from wrong by your own moral standards, you're building a strong inner strength. The more you practice, the more you will see. Inner independence is not lonely but liberating. It allows you to make decisions based on your personal values, not social pressure. It helps you stay true to your principles even when everyone around you changes. And most of all, it creates a solid foundation for you to grow without fear of being dependent on anyone or anything. Relying on yourself does not mean rejecting the world, but standing firm in it with wisdom, integrity, and trust in your inner reason. It is one of the strongest foundations on which to build inner discipline, not easily shaken by external circumstances, nor easily broken by failure. 2. Find your life purpose compass for self-discipline. For Marcus Aurelius, all self-improvement comes down to one thing: purpose. But he doesn't mean purpose in a vague, lofty ideal. He means something practical, something that gets you out of bed in the morning, something that keeps you grounded when temptation knocks, and something that keeps you on track amid the storms of life. In Stoic philosophy, living according to nature is not simply a slogan. It means understanding one's role in the grand scheme of things and acting in accordance with one's inner virtue. For Aurelius, the purpose of life is not something to be pondered once and then forgotten, but a compass that guides every action, every decision, big or small. In modern times, finding true purpose can be more difficult than ever. We live in an age of overwhelming choice, information overload, and endless invitations to stray from our path. But it is in this chaos that Stoic philosophy becomes more essential than ever. It teaches us to set aside superficial desires, separate fleeting emotions from what is truly important, and then look deep within and ask, what is truly worth my time and energy? Marcus does not call us to pursue fame or external success. He calls us to fulfill our responsibilities with integrity, to perform our tasks, even the smallest, mundane tasks, with dedication. He believes that consistency in these simple actions is the foundation of solid inner discipline. To apply this, start by observing yourself. Ask yourself, what do I feel fulfilled doing? What kind of challenges do I find myself drawn to? What problems am I willing to commit to solving, even if it doesn't get recognized? These answers will give you clues to your life purpose. And once you find it, discipline will no longer be forced. It will become a natural consequence because you don't want to betray what makes your existence meaningful. Then it will be easier to say no to things that take you away from your purpose, and every morning you will have a reason to get up, and every evening you will have a sincere question to ask yourself, did I live up to that purpose today? When you practice this daily, you're not just building discipline, you're creating a life that's focused, deep, and unshakable. 3. Voluntary suffering. I train my mind through intentional suffering. In a world where comfort is the norm and everything is geared toward ease, voluntary suffering may seem counterintuitive, but for Marcus Aurelius and for all Stoics, it was not foolishness, but a powerful life strategy. Voluntary suffering is not about seeking pain, but about training yourself to be ready when pain comes. Aurelius understood something simple but profound. Suffering is inevitable. No matter how well you prepare, life will still throw you losses, failures, and unexpected challenges. Therefore, the mind must be trained before the actual battle begins. Just as soldiers train in peacetime so that they will not panic when war breaks out, the Stoics deliberately undergo hardships so that the soul becomes resilient, steadfast, and unshakable. It can start with simple actions, skipping a meal, taking a cold shower, waking up an hour earlier, giving up your phone for a day. These seemingly small things, when practiced consciously, can teach you a lot about yourself, about how you react when you're uncomfortable, when you're not pampered, and when you're forced to confront your inner feelings. Stoicism does not advocate self-torture, but rather a new perspective on comfort. It asks the question, are you enslaved by comfort? Are you trading your inner strength for instant comfort? Voluntary suffering puts you in control. It creates distance between you and temptation. When you learn to say no to ease, you begin to take back control, the power to decide what is worthy of your attention and energy. And there's something deeper. Choosing hardship teaches you gratitude. When you've experienced hunger, you learn to appreciate every bite. When you've voluntarily lived without it, you learn not to take what you have for granted. From then on, gratitude becomes more than just a word. It becomes a state of being, a solid foundation for you to walk through adversity with equanimity. Furthermore, voluntary suffering helps you understand and connect with others more deeply. When you experience a small part of the hardships others endure every day, empathy and humility naturally arise. You stop judging, stop being arrogant. You come closer to your true self, and with that, you come closer to an indomitable spirit. Discipline is not born of ease. It is born in the moment you reject comfort for a greater cause. When you practice this every day, those small steps become armor for your mind, a silent but powerful preparation for you to step into life without fear. 4. Distinguish between what is within and what is beyond your control. True freedom begins with right perception. Of all the core principles of Stoicism, the concept of distinguishing between what is within your control and what is beyond your control is the crown jewel. It's simple, easy to understand, and yet, if practiced properly, can free you from 90% of your unnecessary worry, anger, and suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have control over your thoughts, your actions, and your reactions. Everything else, the weather, the attitudes of others, or the final outcome, is out of your control." That statement may seem obvious, but ask yourself, how many times in your life have you suffered because of something you had no control over? We get angry when someone treats us unfairly. We get frustrated when our efforts don't produce the results we expect. We worry about the future, we fret about the past. All of these emotions, while legitimate, come from trying to control the uncontrollable. In contrast, the Stoic learns to turn inward, focusing on the only thing he truly controls, the quality of his own actions, thoughts, and virtues. When something is beyond his reach, he doesn't waste time resisting, he lets go. Not out of helplessness, but out of wisdom. This does not mean that we become indifferent or insensitive. Stoicism does not teach us to escape from life, but to face life properly. When you know where to put your energy, you live more effectively, less tired, and especially not easily defeated by circumstances. In modern life, this principle is more vital than ever. We are surrounded by volatility, unstable job markets, negative news, judgmental social media. If you don't have a strong mental filter, you will be sucked into the whirlwind, losing control of yourself without even realizing it. Stoic philosophy gives you that filter with a very simple yet incredibly profound question. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. Focus on the attitudes you choose, the ways you react, the values you hold, the actions you take. That is the soil you can plant in, and that is the only place where self-discipline can be cultivated and grown. Marcus Aurelius isn't saying that you'll always feel good. He's saying that if you can keep your sanity, even in situations of injustice, chaos, or uncertainty, you've already won the battle with yourself. And that's the noblest victory, because no one can take it away from you. In a world where everything changes rapidly, the person who knows when to let go and when to hold on is the most steadfast. They are not overwhelmed by the flow of life. They stand firm, calm, and live true to the strong nature that has been forged within. 5. Show up every day. Discipline is about repetition, not excitement. Marcus Aurelius didn't believe in occasional bursts of energy. He believed in the power of consistency, in showing up every day, both physically and mentally. For him, discipline wasn't about bursting into flames for a few days and then going dark. It was about repeating the right actions, however small, while never being absent from your duties. Show up means not giving up halfway, not waiting for motivation to start. It is the act of getting up in the morning, even if nothing is exciting today. It is doing the work you have committed to, even if inspiration is gone. For Marcus, every day is a battlefield, not to win over others, but to keep your word to yourself. Stoic philosophy teaches that self-discipline is not about intensity, but about consistency. A great day is not made by one big action, but by dozens of small, persistent actions, repeated over and over again. In the modern world, where we are easily carried away by the moment of inspiration, then quickly give up when faced with difficulties, the idea of being present every day becomes a sobering and essential reminder. Aurelius advises, do today's work today. Don't carry around yesterday's mistakes. Don't fear tomorrow's unfulfilled dreams. Acting in the present moment is the only way you can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. You don't need a perfect start, you just need to show up. Whether it's writing a paragraph in a book you've been thinking about, doing a few minutes of exercise, or simply spending 10 minutes with a loved one, small actions, repeated every day, are the foundation for unshakable discipline. You don't have to do a lot, but you do have to do it consistently, because every day you show up, you're inculcating a habit, cultivating a character, and proving that you can believe in yourself. Remember, you don't control the outcome, but you control the effort, and in that repeated effort you find steady progress, not flashy, but steady. That's the Stoic ideal, no fuss, no show, but rock solid, day after day, action after action. 6. Delay gratification. Master your desires, aim for something of lasting value. In the view of Marcus Aurelius and Stoic philosophy, delaying gratification is not a denial of pleasure, but a strategic act where you are willing to sacrifice short-term pleasure in exchange for deeper and more lasting results. For the Stoics, true freedom begins with the ability to control your desires rather than being driven by them. Marcus argued that being driven by your desires is a loss of freedom because you are no longer acting rationally but reacting to your impulses. This not only weakens your discipline, but also makes you lose direction in life. Delaying gratification doesn't mean you don't enjoy anything. It just means you choose what's more important instead of what's more immediately attainable. This could be reading a book instead of surfing the internet, saving instead of spending, or exercising instead of mindlessly resting. Marcus Aurelius taught that mastery of desire is part of virtue, and it brings a deeper satisfaction, the satisfaction that comes from knowing that one is living rightly, acting with purpose, and not being controlled by temptation. This principle is especially important in the modern world where everything is optimized for now, but the Stoic is different. They focus on long-term results, on personal dignity, and on sustainable progress. Practicing delayed gratification is also a way to build willpower. Every time you say no to a short-term temptation, you're not just exercising control, you're sending yourself a message: I'm worth more than the immediate. And that is the core spirit of self-discipline, to steadfastly pursue what is valuable rather than being pulled aside by fleeting pleasures. 7. Never play the victim. Maintain inner control amidst the storms of life. One of the greatest freedoms offered by Stoic philosophy is the freedom from being a victim of circumstances. Marcus Aurelius taught that no matter what loss, hurt, or injustice life throws at us, we always have a choice in how we respond, and in that choice, human dignity and inner discipline is born. Life won't always be fair. There will be things that happen that you don't deserve, betrayals, rejections, unexpected disasters, but Marcus never encourages us to use these as an excuse to stagnate, get angry, or give up. On the contrary, he sees every adversity as a test of moral character, and if you overcome it with justice and reason, you don't just become stronger, you become truly free. When you choose to play the victim, you surrender control of your emotions and thoughts to the outside world. You say, I'm sad because of them. I failed because of circumstances. I can't because life doesn't allow me to. It sounds reasonable, but deep down, you're locking yourself into an invisible prison where you no longer take responsibility for your own life. Stoicism calls you out of that prison. It doesn't deny negative emotions, but it teaches you not to be consumed by them. You may hurt, but you don't have to give up. You may stumble, but you don't have to give up on yourself. Marcus writes, every event brings with it a question. Will you let it define you, or will you use it to shape you? Giving up the victim role doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending to be strong. It's an active act of the mind. You look at the situation, acknowledge it for what it is, and choose to respond with reason and dignity, rather than with impulse or old habits. Start by observing your reactions to adversity. How do you respond to criticism? When you fail, do you blame? When you are rejected, do you retreat into bitterness? These reactions reveal a lot and are where you can start to practice. And when you change that response, you're not just moving away from being a victim, you're moving toward becoming the master of your own life. You don't need someone to apologize to you to be at peace. You don't need ideal circumstances to thrive. You just need an internal decision. I'm not going to let my pain define me. That is the Stoic spirit. It is where discipline is not just an outward act, but a deep, steadfast, and unyielding attitude of life. 8. Ignore the naysayers. Don't let gossip derail your path. The 8th principle of the Stoic journey of self-discipline is learning to ignore non-constructive criticism, an essential life skill in today's world, where everyone has an opinion, often from behind a screen, and often not from a place of understanding. For Marcus Aurelius, the praise or criticism of others should not affect your spirit or your goals, because in Stoic philosophy, what other people think, like the weather or the vicissitudes of the world, is beyond your control, and therefore should not dominate you. He emphasized that we should not seek our self-worth through the eyes of others, because by doing so we are losing our independence in thinking and acting. What is necessary is to know clearly what we are doing, why we are doing it, and act rationally, regardless of outside consensus or criticism. In reality, there will always be people who disagree with you. There will always be people who criticize, doubt, or disapprove of your efforts, even if you are doing the right thing. Stoicism does not teach you to protest, argue, or try to please everyone. Instead, it teaches you to focus on what is within your control, your own actions, intentions, and virtue. Remember, criticism doesn't define you unless you let it. Stoics learn to listen to their inner voice rather than their outer one. They use reason to judge which words are worth heeding and which are worth ignoring. Confidence doesn't come from getting approval from others, it comes from living up to your own moral standards. When you ignore the nonsense and stay true to yourself, you are building up a steadfastness that is not easily shaken by the outside world. And that's the foundation of self-discipline. Doing the right thing, even when no one supports it, and even when some people oppose it. 9. Self-assessment. Everyday discipline is not about perfection, it is about self-enlightenment. Of all the tools Stoicism offers its practitioners, none is as simple and effective as the habit of daily self-evaluation. Marcus Aurelius, even as an emperor, took time each night to examine his own actions, thoughts, and attitudes, not to judge himself harshly, but to be honest with himself, and thereby to improve. You might think, I don't have time for that. But think again. If you have time to scroll through social media, to worry about judging others, then surely you have time to look at yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. Self-assessment is not a test score, it is an internal dialogue where you cannot lie. Simple but incisive questions like, did I live up to my values today? How did I react to difficulties, to criticism, to temptation? Did I let my emotions rule, or did I choose reason as my guide? This self-reflection doesn't make you feel inferior, on the contrary, it makes you stronger, because you're learning to befriend the truth. Stoics aren't afraid of being wrong, they're afraid of not realizing they're wrong, and so they examine themselves not to criticize, but to correct. They don't seek perfection, they seek genuine, day-by-day progress. Self-reflection also brings another benefit that few people realize: peace. When you dare to look at yourself honestly, you are no longer torn by unspoken regrets, unnamed emotions, or unexplained mistakes. You close the day with clarity, and you go to bed with a clear mind, free of unprocessed clutter. Understand that discipline is not just about what you do, but also about how you dare to look back at what you have done. And it is this daring to look that creates a person who lives with direction, not led by circumstances, but guided by inner values. You don't have to wait for big successes to start living right. You just have to spend a few minutes every day, before you go to bed, sitting with yourself in silence, in honesty, and in a commitment that tomorrow you will live better than you did today. That action repeated regularly is the deepest form of self-discipline. And as Marcus Aurelius lived, it is also the shortest path to inner strength, freedom, and a life that is never defeated. 10. Follow the example of wise people. Don't learn from theory, learn from living examples. In his quest to develop self-discipline and live a meaningful life, Marcus Aurelius never believed that he could do it alone, purely from theory. Even as an emperor and a great philosopher, he constantly wrote about people he admired, concrete role models who demonstrated virtue, not in words, but in actions. This is the spirit of the 9th principle of Stoicism: imitate the wise. Stoicism teaches that wisdom is not an abstract theory, but an art of living, demonstrated by one's attitudes, choices, and the way one deals with suffering, success, failure, or challenges. And the quickest way to acquire that art is to observe and learn from those who have lived it rightly. Marcus Aurelius devoted the first pages of his meditations to the virtues he had learned from his foster parents, teachers, friends, and colleagues. Sobriety, justice, responsibility, and tolerance, all were vivid, concrete lessons. No textbook can replace the living example of a real person. In our time, you can do the same. Look for people not the most famous, but those who live their values. It could be a teacher, a friend, a classic author, or even a figure from history whose way of living awakens something beautiful in you. When you choose a role model to follow, look deeply at how they overcome adversity, how they stay principled when challenged, and how they treat those less fortunate. Don't just admire. Ask yourself, in that situation, could I behave like them? How can I apply that quality to my life, little by little, every day? The important thing is that you don't need to be a copy of anyone. The goal of modeling is not to imitate, but to learn how to extract the essence, to perfect yourself in your own way. This has another powerful effect. It breaks down mental isolation. When you have a role model, you no longer feel alone in your journey of self-improvement. You feel like you are part of a continuous stream of people who have tried to live well, live right, live disciplined, regardless of their circumstances. In a world where many people are chasing after glamour, you can choose to live like a wise person, quiet, thoughtful, and driven. And by doing so, not only will you be transformed, you will also become a role model for others. Remember, you become the person you observe the most, so choose wisely. Choose someone who has the qualities you want to cultivate, and then, with each small action, you will find yourself moving closer to your ideal self, not because you are imitating, but because you are awakening to the great person already within you.